Hey guys, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today we are painting some pumpkins. So autumn and Halloween are knocking at the doors, and yes, let's have a look and let's get started. I prepare some colors. The background colors, I don't want to be them too strong, so I mix like a gray out of indigo blue and some paints gray. Then I add a little bit of cadmium red, playing a little bit with the colors. So it's really pale backgrounds and the colors are not very strong. Why? The colors of the pumpkins are going to be quite bright. I prepare some cobalt blue for the sky, but I don't want it to be too strong. And then I use some yellow ochre and add there as well some of the cadmium red. So I want to add this color to the ground, and I need some green, so I prepare a lot of colors, and I have here a little bit of a olive green out of cobalt blue and some yellow ochre, and then some bright green, which I actually mixed out of a lemon yellow and some cobalt blue. The second thing that I do is to wet the paper. So I'm using quite good quality paper, and I added the water to the background, so around the pumpkins, because the paintings is a little bit larger. I thought I don't add masking fluid, so I'm very careful. I have added now some blue to the sky, and I continue with the ground where I added this yellow ochre and some cadmium red mixture, which is not very strong in orange, and then the different kind of different shades of green. I have here quite a lot of time to play around, so I try to be as fast as possible with the first layer. And then I add some salt. In the background, while the paper is still wet, so I have actually noticed that it's still possible to do, I add a darker layer out of with the gray that I have prepared before, and those are trees. So a little bit of a forest in the background and further away standing trees. I try to add different thickness to the trees so it looks much more realistic, as well as they are not extremely straight, so it's not just because I'm not able to do with my hand very straight lines, but I really want to have some motion in the painting. I don't overdo it with the trees either, so it's not a lot of them there. It's kind of like the sky is shining through. And then I still add some of the green. A little bit of a stronger layer of green, and add here as well some of the grass halms. What I have forgot to mention is that I have added a little bit of a masking fluid to some single grass halms before I started to wet the paper. It's possible to wait till the paper has completely dried and then add the masking fluid, wait then, and then continue with the paper painting. to the trees I wanted to have a little bit of a different shades, so not just having this gray, but I added the darker green here as well. However, I don't add too much, and for me it's quite important that this darker green is kind of surrounding the pumpkin, so that later on the orange color and the very bright green color of the pumpkin come through much better, pop up, and that's possible if the background colors are not that bright or in strength. Here I add more of an indigo blue. I use the same brush, so middle-sized brush, and build it up slowly because my paper has been wet for a while quite nicely, so it's possible to do so, but of course you can work in different layers and just wait till the first layer has dried and then continue. Now I continue with the foreground. So I use my big brush here, a flat brush, and I have wetted the paper a little bit before because the foreground has dried up quite fast, and I used different shades of green. I work here as well that kind of I'm using the brush to create some of the grass harms, but also adding bigger patches. I try not to overpaint these salty bits where I have added the salt, so the structure of the salt remains here nicely. And then adding a little bit more of the yellow ochre mixture as well to add dry grass, so it is really like a nice autumn feeling here. While the paper is still wet, I add with a little bit stronger green, so I added more of the indigo blue, and it's kind of like a filling in some spaces so that the longer grass comes. You can recognize it's like the spaces between the grass, so they're a little bit more darker areas. And here I also add more salt onto the darker paint. I paint around the masking fluid, so I really want to have the contrast between the lighter grass harms and then underneath is much darker color. And here I use quite a lot of wet to wet. I wait till everything has dried so I can continue with my main motif, which are the pumpkins. I use a very bright color, so I make sure this mix it out of yellow ochre and some cadmium red, and it gives a really nice orange. I have wetted the pumpkin area before, and this at least the bigger one with the orange color, because I really wanted to work on the shape, which with wet to wet technique gives me much more time. Now I added to my mixture much more of the cadmium red, and I really get a nice darker orange, and I try to work with the brush strokes in around so that the pumpkin remains its shape. So I try to see where are the segments, and then adding the orange and a little bit more darker red to the pumpkin, especially at the top. And then I mix a little bit of the orange with the bright green and add it to the side of the pumpkin, so it's kind of like it's reflecting the grass as well as the a little bit the color of the neighboring pumpkin, which is gonna be turquoise blue, bright green pumpkin. But now I continue to mix the color for my second pumpkin and add here lemon yellow and some turquoise blue. Actually, you can see that I have not wetted the paper, so I'm working quite fast. I used a bigger brush for this one. And then take off some of the paint, so kind of like the lighter area stays there, and it gives a nice roundness to the different segments. Then I continue to add more of the turquoise blue. And while the painting is still wet, so while the area of the pumpkin is still wet, I give a little bit lighter colors first, and then I start to build it up. Here I add as well some of the olive green, so it's a bit the reflection of the surrounding. But I wanted that in the middle of the pumpkin there is a very bright color, so I'm working here with a bright green, a lot of lemon yellow, and very little of turquoise blue, so it kind of increases the chroma, and it really catches the attention of the viewer. I also try to work a little bit onto the foreground, so on the grass. I don't want to add too many details, so what I do is basically just adding a little bit of green here and there for the now. But yes, I continue with the stem. So here I have a little bit of a yellow ochre and some covered blue, and then I add more of a indigo blue there, so it's a very nice contrast. And with the green pumpkin I added some orange and add the green now there as well. Then I continue with working on the shape of the pumpkins, so I really want to emphasize and give much more color to it, so it really pops out. And I use the same colors as I have used before, so yellow ochre and some cadmium red, and I add the colors a little bit like to the top and then to the bottom and between the segments, so while the first layer is still shining through, and I give a really nice red here. Although I have a little bit wetted the side of the pumpkin before with clean water, I continue to add the color without adding the water. So if I feel that the edges of the pumpkins are too strong, like here, I add more water and then I spread it. But otherwise I try to have this really nice structure, so of a really light layer on the top, which I think looks much more nicer. And occasionally I add some of the darker orange, and then I spread it with the brush from side to side while having keeping the roundness of the pumpkin in mind. So this way it really gives a nice round pumpkin around a very nice segments, round segments. I continue a little bit with the sides, and those drops of cadmium red really makes it looking beautifully. The shadow from the neighboring pumpkin is a bit of a greenish color, and I added it while the pumpkin is still quite wet. And here a bit more of a red. and they mixing nicely together, so it gives a bit of a darker and a bit of a less brighter color, but that means that the balance fits here really nicely. I continue with the neighboring pumpkin, so I proceed kind of the same way. I'm adding a very light layer of the same colors that I have used before, so such as turquoise blue and lemon yellow, and then building up the color and the roundness of the pumpkin. Here a little bit of a light green, and the strength of the pumpkin is not very strong. Here you can see as well that the brush strokes going from side to side while they're emphasizing the roundness, while also the first layer comes through. And where the pumpkin is touching the grass, it's a much more dark color, so that the shadows of the grass or columns is reflected onto the pumpkin. Adding here a little bit of a strong turquoise blue or green, while the paint is still wet. And then continue to work with the stems, so just adding gauze of the green colors to emphasize the darker areas. Have a little bit of a look where to add more structure, but I'm quite careful not to overdo it. And then continue to work on the grass. So I want the foreground to be relatively light and not adding too many of the grass harms, because too many details might distract from the pumpkins themselves. So it's just really keeping it light and easy, only adding more of a structure to the pumpkin itself. What I really like to do is to add more color to the surroundings, so kind of like using the orange of the pumpkin and put it to the sides, as well a bit green from the green pumpkin. But that was basically it, so thank you for watching and remember to subscribe. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you did enjoy it as much as I did. So my pumpkins are a little bit of in a forest ground, and I really tried to keep the focus on those two, orange and slightly bluish pumpkin. And yes, I did enjoy the process, and I hope you did too. And I see you in my next video. Bye!